We have Amy Balliett of Killer Infographics on the line. Amy, how are we doing?
I'm doing very good. How are you doing?
Oh, we're very good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very interested in talking to you about the visual communication side of digital marketing. Let me tell my audiences here. Audiences? I have one audience, right?
That's right, just one.
Or do I have like a schizophrenic?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe.
Possibly. You never know.
How many staffs do you have?
Stop.
One staff to rule them all.
Sorry, Amy. I can't control these people. Last segment they went awry. So I'll just start smacking them upside the head.
When you listen to it, you'll see who went awry. Who started it?
Right.
Who started it?
No. Not going to throw that one at me. All right. So, hey, Amy Balliett is the CEO and co-founder of Killer Infographics, a Seattle-based industry leader in visual communications. She owned her first company, a candy store and an ice cream parlor at the age of 17 before going to college.
That's really cool.
That's actually really, really cool.
Thank you.
Absolutely. She's subsequently built a successful career in SEO and marketing and was headed up to SEO at several different companies. In 2009, she partnered with Nick Grant to build a lead gen-based website or multiple websites under the entity of Seven Figure Project. But in the fall of 2010, business pivoted into an entirely new model, and that's infographic design. So since 2010 to now, Killer Infographics has designed more than 4,000 infographics, motion graphics, and interactive graphic banners, and just interactive graphics over 300 clients around the globe, including Microsoft, Boeing, Adobe, Nikon, Starbucks, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the United Nations, and more. Well, we'll forgive you on the United Nations one, but just kidding.
That's some pretty heavy hitters right there.
I know. That's some big brands there.
Big brands.
Congratulations, Amy. I mean, tell us, how did you do it? Tell us about how Killer Infographics got its start.
Well, it was all on accident, to be entirely honest with you. So we basically... like the bio of me says, my business partner and I started a company in 2009 that was all based on creating a bunch of different lead generation and affiliate model websites and monetizing those. And I actually created in June of 2010, I started creating some infographics for those sites to help them just gain some backlinks and help the sites gain more traction online. This was 2010 when if you put the word infographic next to anything,
right,
it automatically garnered thousands of backlinks. So
those were the days.
Yeah, right. You can look up the infographics. They are considered, in my opinion, two of the worst infographics ever designed in the history of the world. One of them is Google PageRank defined.
Right.
That was an infographic I did all about what PageRank is because my background's SEO. So I was comparing PageRank to running for prom king. And so it's all about popularity score. And then we did another one that was the history of e-commerce, also an absolutely horrific infographic. Both of them got 2,500 backlinks in the first week or two.
Oh, wow.
It was crazy. I do very much remember when we posted the PageRank one, we tweeted to Rand at Moz, and his tweet response was, "This is not an infographic." It was heartbreaking for me because he was my hero. So,
oh, wow.
but at the same time, it was eye-opening because he was right. It was not an infographic. If somebody were to give me something like that today, I would turn around and call it garbage as well. So, but we saw all this success with infographics and started to realize, well, wait, if they're done properly, they could actually do a lot of good for people. It's not just a great marketing tool, but it's a great way to educate people and to really impact change. And so in September of 2010, somebody reached out to us and asked us to design an infographic for them because we were getting a lot of attention for what we were designing for ourselves. And that's when we saw an opportunity to pivot. We knew a lot of designers out of work and thought that it would be just a really interesting new industry to jump into. And so we slowly pivoted over the next 6 or 7 months, actually, and then finally went all in on Killer Infographics, sold all of our other websites, and started building a team and growing to what we are now, which is an in-house team of 26 people. We do infographics, we do animated video, we do interactive content. We're really, our name kind of shoehorns us as just an infographic agency, but really we're a visual communications agency, which is a very, very new industry, and we're considered one of the leaders in the industry.
Well, that's fantastic. What's ZippyCart have to do with Killer Infographics?
So ZippyCart was one of the websites that that we had launched in 2009 when we were doing all of the lead gen and affiliate model sites. Gotcha. And ZippyCart was the one that really took off. It was making a whopping $4,000 a month, which
that's big bucks,
right? For my business partner and I, we were like, we were really stoked about it because we were working on it nights and weekends while we had day jobs, and really thought if we kind of turned our attention to it full time, we could really turn it up. And then Penguin happened. So Penguin,
I remember that day.
Right? Penguin was the day we decided, let's just focus on infographics. So I think Panda happened first, and then Penguin.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we ended up, really loving what we were doing with ZippyCart. But in the end, ZippyCart was all about developing a lot of content and really focusing entirely on the SEO side of things. Whereas we found a lot more passion in visual communication, being able to create animated videos, being able to create infographics, and being able to really create valuable content, which it took us a few years to get to. Our first couple of years, a lot of the content was what most infographics were in 2010 and 2011, which was, infographics about mortgages and infographics about loans and debt collection and stuff like that, because most of the people who wanted infographics at that time were domainers. And so it took a couple of years to get us to the point where we are now, where we're working with these really great companies and developing content that we're really, really, really excited to be putting out there to get in front of people.
Well, you've moved from, I use this term carefully because I don't think you were ever in this space, but link bait was a key concept back in the day to be able to get that embeddable content, to be able to have that inbound authoritative link or semi-authoritative link coming back to the domain. But you've changed and you've transitioned into a much more of a conversion-focused medium.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. The way I always put it is we were kind of the fast food of infographic design at the time, and we really shifted our focus to become more of a kind of fine dining experience.
I love it. Well, Amy, I wanted to talk about some stats, and just in the concept of visual communication, because a number of our listeners may not be that well understanding the impact that infographics have when it comes down to how the online community consumes information. And I've certainly watched some of your presentations, and we've got a couple key stats, but I would love for you to embellish upon them. One stat itself, studies actually showed that people remember 10% of what they hear, 20% of what they read, and 80 to maybe even 90% of what they see and do. Can you talk to us about just that concept?
Definitely. Yeah, the basic idea behind that is our brains are hardwired to respond to and hold visual information very differently than any other form of information or communication that exists.
Right.
If you think back to just the very first form of communication we ever had, it was visual communication with cave paintings on walls. As we've evolved over time, we've picked up the written word, and the written word is really just a series of symbols that have meanings associated to them as well, that's strung together equal content. But we don't think in text. A test I always give when I'm presenting to people is I always say, when I say the word dog, what pops into your head? And I have people shout out my cat, or I have people shout out a bone, or people shout out a dog, but I don't ever have people say the letters D, O, and G. And it's because pictures are what pop into our head as we're remembering things or considering any audible information that comes at us, or any text-based information. And so the idea is our brain is constantly taking information in and processing it into images to begin with. Mm-hmm. So by just communicating visually from the beginning, we're basically skipping a step. We're not forcing the brain to process something into an image. The visual cortex is the largest and strongest part of our brain for a reason. Babies, when they're learning how to communicate, they communicate visually first. They recognize pictures in storybooks before they understand what their mother or father is reading to them.
Right.
And so because it's innate and hardwired in us to process everything visually, it makes sense that when we're given visual information, we have a much higher likelihood to remember and retain that information down the road than we do written information or verbal information, audible information. And so that's why that's where that statistic comes from. And that statistic specifically, there have been additional studies related to that specific one.
Right.
And some of those studies have come out and said, actually, it's more like 90% of the information that we actually retain and will remember 3 weeks down the road is visual information. Yeah. So the way they did that study was they sat down sample groups and basically gave people a bunch of information audibly and then quizzed them, gave people information through text and then quizzed them, and then gave them information through visuals and then quizzed them. And they would quiz them every few days. And as the weeks went by, the visual information was what they retained more and more.
And it makes perfect sense. And anybody that kind of puts themselves to the test, they absolutely can understand that the any type of imagery on a page will be processed before any of the other content is on there. And there's tests done just on testing whether a graphic along with content actually holds people's attention longer than just a text-based web page. And that's a foregone conclusion. I mean, that is the nature of the game. You've got to have imagery even to anchor somebody on a page. And you had another statistic from your presentation, traffic to business sites. Pinterest has more traffic directed to sites than LinkedIn, YouTube, and Google combined. Can you just elaborate on that? I mean, that certainly ties into everything that you're talking to, but it's also a motivator analysis. Not just that people are retaining; they're also taking action. Right?
Exactly, and to be clear on that stat, it's YouTube, LinkedIn, and Google Plus combined.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Google.
Yeah, exactly. That would be amazing. And so, yeah, basically, the idea behind that, and that is a study that was released by Pinterest directly. So it's one thing to note is the source. The source is Pinterest, but it hasn't been refuted.
Oh, but they couldn't be biased. Now, could they?
Yeah, right. Exactly. But it hasn't been refuted, and
sure.
It makes sense when you think about it, though, because a lot of people are using Pinterest right now to create lists that they plan to take action on in the future.
Right. So
they're using Pinterest to create these visual lists so that they remember down the road to go back and click through to the website. And it's much easier than bookmarking something in your browser, because you bookmark something in your browser, that's just one big text-based list. You're going to forget about that. Pinterest brings fun to it because you get this great wall of visuals to look at every single time. It gives a sense of accomplishment as well as you're building that up. So the idea that Pinterest drives more traffic to business sites than Google plus YouTube and LinkedIn combined makes a lot of sense when you think about it that way. Because the whole idea behind Pinterest is really you're building a list to take action on at some point. And again, because it's a visual list, you're actually going to go back and take action.
Absolutely. We do have something that I think is popping on the microphone there. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. Hey, retargeting of ads and options for pins and websites. I mean, from the visual standpoint, and we certainly want to dig into infographics, but we as digital marketers are seeing some huge benefits from a image retargeting of ads to visitors to the sites. These things, this data that we're seeing here is very valuable to understand that a text-based ad, just an ad itself, does not fare nearly as well as an iconic image, something that's pulling them back. Go ahead.
Hey, Amy, I just read an article today. This is Stephanie, by the way. I just read an article today. Hi.
Amy, Stephanie. I didn't even introduce you guys, did I?
You didn't?
No. Nope.
That's so rude.
Well, because they were all being weird.
You're the only one that matters.
Anyway, I just read that Pinterest ads are retargeting options for pins and for websites. So now they're using Ads Manager that can retarget on pins, clicks, comments, saves, likes, and close-ups. And create audiences. Did you see that, or do you have anything to add? I mean, it's just going to make Pinterest more dominating, I guess.
Exactly, it is. And the thing to think about with Pinterest is it's a great channel for B2C, but it's not a great channel if you're B2B.
That's right.
So as an example, 50% of our traffic right now is coming from Pinterest, but it's all consumers who want to come to the Killer Infographics website and check out fun infographics and videos and things like that. It's not potential customers. So if you're a B2B service like my company is, right. Pinterest isn't really what you want to be targeting. But what you should be targeting at that point is sites like LinkedIn and Facebook and things like that, where you can do some really great demographic targeting. And you should definitely use visuals. When you're putting images on Facebook, they get 65% more likes, comments, and shares than text does on Facebook.
Wow.
And when you put actual video on Facebook now, I don't have the exact stat in front of me. I have that 65% memorized, but video on Facebook, I'm pretty sure it's around 180% more likes, comments, and shares.
Really?
Yeah, I can pull that up. I know I've got it in one of my decks sitting on my computer here. But yeah, it's a crazy amount. And that's because when Facebook changed their algorithm last year, where they automatically are playing video as people are scrolling through, right. It's so much stickier. People are just glomming onto that information.
Mm-hmm. These stats are amazing, and I mean, just to bring it back to relevancy for the B2B listener who's managing their company or the marketer, recognizing that you haven't implemented the visual communication in your digital marketing, it's a stark reality when you realize it, because these stats move the needle to an enormous degree for each and every campaign that you're working on. You've got to understand how important it is to be able to incorporate the visual cues to your audience. A stat right here that I'm reading, 46% of marketers say photography is critical to their current marketing and storytelling strategies. We're all in the business of storytelling, and we're also in the business of meeting the consumer where they are in that buyer's journey, right? There's some huge information out there and statistics to be able to show you that if you just think through what would be good good visual cues to get that user through that next page to another page, and being able to use a persuasive graphic as well as a storytelling graphic. These things are immense in the opportunity it introduces to to conversion optimization. So, can you talk a little bit about what you've seen from implementing? You've done so many infographics. The statistics that you may have for before and after of utilizing certain types of infographics and visual communication to enhance conversion. Can you give us a little bit of a picture there?
Of course. One of the biggest ones that I always like to talk about before even thinking about infographics is thinking about motion graphics.
Oh.
Now, part of this is because I am a little biased. I went to film school. I care a lot about animation and live action. I think that it just has this great opportunity to drive conversions, drive engagement, etc. But Real SEO put out a really good stat a while back, doing a lot of different research that they put together, that said that videos on a homepage increase conversion rates by 86% on average.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've seen this exact same thing happen just at our company alone. It's interesting because at Killer, we've actually never ran a paid marketing campaign before. We're going to start next week for the first time in 6 years doing paid marketing.
Yeah.
And that's because we actually end up getting 10 inbound leads a day right now just off of organic, and just off of the way we've got our website set up. The minute we put a homepage video up on our website, which was the first time was 4 years ago, we went from getting 10 inbound leads a week to 10 inbound leads a day. It was a huge shift. And every time we've upgraded that video, for instance, right now our homepage video takes up the full screen when you land on the homepage.
Yep.
It shows our entire team, because in our industry, there's a lot of companies that outsource all of the design work. And so we want to show our clients that we are all in-house and in one place. So it shows that without having to say that. It shows our ability to visualize data and information. All of that, ever since we put that up, while we've stayed at 10 inbound leads on average a day, the lead quality has grown exponentially, where we went from our inbound leads being people with the budget for maybe one infographic to people looking for six-figure campaigns. So it was a drastic shift just every time we've altered and changed our video to make it higher quality every single time. And so in our research, what we found is that people view video first on a website. They want to see that in the upper fold of their landing page.
Right.
So they'll view video first, especially if it's 90 seconds or less. If it's more than 90 seconds, you have a really quick drop off. Only about 40% of people who land on a web page will watch a 90-second plus video, but almost 99% will watch a video if it's under 90 seconds and on your homepage, as long as the thumbnail or the imagery shows that it's quality and not stock imagery or stock vectors. And so people watch a video first. After they watch the video, that's when they start looking for compelling visual communication. They're not looking for a long scroll infographic. You don't want to have a long scroll infographic on your landing page.
Right.
That's not going to help. What you want instead is micro content. I'm going to jump to another stat because I know way too many at this point. It's become my career.
It's okay. You're among friends.
Perfect. 95% of consumers prefer short form content over long form content. So when you think about that, this is one of the reasons video has become so popular, because video is short form content. It stays on one screen the entire time.
Yep.
And the information is spoon fed to you through a voiceover, through the sound design, through everything. So then when you're thinking about providing static visual content, you have to think about building it for the phone screen specifically.
Amen. Yep.
Yeah. So I was I was sitting down. I had the privilege of sitting down and talking to Guy Kawasaki at South by this last March. He was answering some questions on visual content for a program we have called the Visual Minute. And one of the things he said really hit me, which was, you got to think of every piece of content that you design like you're designing a book cover. And if you think about it like designing a book cover, you also have to think about where people see book covers today. They see book covers in these tiny thumbnail images on Amazon now. They don't see them on shelves. And so everything you design, you have to make sure that in the smallest size, it gets the information out you want. And that's the idea of micro content. So if you want to have a great converting page on your site, lead with video, and then lead with simple statistics about why your service is better, why your product is better, or how many people use your product. But visualize those statistics. Don't just have typography. Don't just have numbers, because then you just have a reading assignment. When you visualize the statistics, you're helping people translate those numbers in their brain far faster and better. And so we try on our website to just have visuals as hooks everywhere we possibly can.
Absolutely.
I mean, our website is basically one big piece of eye candy. The problem with that is load times, which with a 26-person team, the optimization of the website actually ends up falling on me because our developers are so busy with client work. So as of right now, our site speed is actually quite slow because of all of the images. And so a quick solve for that, which we haven't implemented yet, is just WP Smush or Yahoo Smush, or using something like that to get the images on there, but let them serve faster.
Well, you're absolutely right. That was my first takeaway whenever I saw the front page of your website. It was just so it's so connected with exactly who you are and what you do. So, I mean, hands down, I was impressed with that element. Hey, we would like to be able to go ahead and make a break here and bring you back on to the next segment. You got time for a few more questions?
Oh, of course.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to be continuing our conversation with Amy right after this. Points I wanted to cover regarding infographics. And Tom actually brought this up. Are there times when an infographic simply won't work?
Yes. There are dozens of times when an infographic won't work. It's kind of funny because, you know, the infographic industry became popular in about 2009. And here we are, 2016, and we have people calling us still who just learned what an infographic was yesterday. And so what happens is it's a buzzword in their office, and maybe their boss is saying, hey, I just heard about this. I need an infographic. And so it's kind of like trying to fit a square peg into a hole, because they come to us and say, here's the problem I want to solve for. My boss says he wants an infographic. Let's do it. But an infographic is not always the right option. To give you an example, one of my favorite stories for this was a nonprofit organization called the Solutions Project. The Solutions Project is headed up by Mark Ruffalo. His entire goal with the Solutions Project is to make America 100% dependent on renewable energy by 2050. And in the process of evangelizing this nonprofit organization, he hired a group of Stanford scientists to identify what's the current energy consumption by state, what type of energy consumption would they need to have if they were dependent on renewable energy, because a state like Phoenix would be dependent on solar energy, while a city like Chicago would be dependent on wind energy, probably. And so they wanted to kind of identify all of those things and then identify what the economic impact would be. So they suddenly had data for 50 different states and came to me and said, well, we want 50 infographics. We want each infographic to be, we want each infographic to be updatable on a regular basis because we want to be able to change it as the numbers change, because every year these numbers are going to change drastically.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
They just didn't get it, did they?
Well, yeah, they want it to be easily shareable. They wanted it to be all done on a nonprofit budget.
Hey, there's that.
50
Right?
infographics.
Yeah. 50 infographics on a nonprofit budget. You can get 50 infographics for really, really cheap, but they're not going to succeed or do anything. Or you can get 50 really quality infographics, but still on a nonprofit budget.
Right.
You're looking at 6 figures. And so, because we do a very good nonprofit discount, but it was still going to be a 6-figure project.
Yep.
So after I kept talking to them, I realized actually what you need is an interactive experience, not an infographic. So what we did was we designed the state of California first. All of the data for the state of California. Every single state had the same data sets, just different numbers in those data sets. So once we designed California, we kind of had a template to work off of. We coded out the template and then tied that template in using JavaScript, tied it into an Excel spreadsheet. And we used the Excel spreadsheet as our database. So then we were able to auto-generate the other 49 infographics without having to charge them a dime to design 49 more infographics. Then we were able to use a Firefox plugin that turns each one into a JPEG so they're easy to share. We're able to add buttons because it's interactive, so a Twitter button, a Facebook button, and email your governor button. And because it's tied into Excel as the back end, all they have to do is change the numbers in Excel. And then it updates automatically on the fly across all of the infographics. So they never have to ever touch the design at any point. And this
that's a pretty innovative solution there. But it took you out of high profitability to you didn't charge them a dime. What's going on here?
Well, they're a nonprofit trying to do good things, so it's better to provide our service where we can. And
Understood.
That's kind of the thing that is a big mission with us, just as our company is.
Right.
We feel like visual communication, in the end, whether people want to say it or not, it can be used as very negative propaganda. And so for us, our thoughts are, if we can get this in the right hands whenever we can, we're going to do our best to do that. And so this year, for instance, we chose a nonprofit to partner with for the whole year, where we're giving them $100,000 worth of service for free. And that's going to be what we do from now on every year. Instead of doing one project a month for a different nonprofit, it'll be a full campaign every year for a nonprofit.
You don't usually hear that from firms giving that type of investment of services to a nonprofit. So that's highly laudable. Are they appreciating that type of value?
Oh, definitely.
Excellent.
Definitely. Yeah, and we're very picky about the nonprofits that we choose to work with.
Right.
But we've built amazing relationships from it.
I was just going to ask, how do you choose them?
We lucked out this year. So this was the first year where we decided, you know what, we're just going to pick one nonprofit, because we've been known in the nonprofit circle as the place to provide free work. So we get
so you built a reputation, didn't you? It was those 50 states. That's what did it to you.
Exactly. So yeah, we get people asking us all the time. This year we decided we're going to build a full application and have a bunch of nonprofits apply. But then a Seattle-based nonprofit came to us wanting to pay for work, not asking for anything for free. And we really just fell in love with their vision and decided that they met every single goal that we had. As an example, so they're a nonprofit called We Count. We Count is trying to use the share economy to help put a dent in homelessness in Seattle.
Wow.
And basically the idea is it's an application, a smartphone application, because it turns out that about 90% of homeless people have access to smartphones or the internet. And so because 90% of homeless people are actually only homeless for 6 months. It's a transitional thing. And so what they're trying to do is close that gap and help people get out of homelessness faster. And the way it works is, let's say you have a backpack that you're wanting to throw out. You don't need it anymore for this reason or that. Maybe you're like me, where you buy a new backpack every 3 weeks because you're in love with bags. So it's crowding your closet. You don't need it anymore.
Right.
Well, maybe a homeless person does need it. So what you do is you go on to the We Count application and you say, I have a backpack that I need to get rid of. It will match you to a homeless person who has said that they need a backpack. And then you can go drop it off at a local drop-off location. So a safe space where you go, you drop it off, and then the homeless person will be notified that it's waiting for them. And they have to go and just give their birth date as opposed to some random identifier, because we don't want to dehumanize anybody.
Sure.
So they give their birth date and they're handed the backpack. And so this is a way to give them the tools they need to maybe show up for that job interview, or start looking for work, or get out of a really bad area where they're living in camps.
That's really cool.
It's really cool. And the founder is Jonathan Spazzato, and Jonathan Spazzato is a founder of GeekWire as well. GeekWire is a really great online publication for the Northwest about the tech scene. He's an investor in a lot of amazing tech companies like Every Move, and he has this power and ability to grow this into something huge. So he wants to start in Seattle, make it a proof of concept, and then go to San Francisco and Manhattan and start building it out in all the major cities, kind of following the Uber methodology. So it's something that has legs that could make a really positive impact in this country as a whole. And for us, that was what we were looking for. And that's why we partnered with them.
So that's how you pick them. You got to find you've got to find those really cool ideas, and be able to get behind them. You're almost doing a bit of wouldn't be considered equity, but you're investing. You're investing in that idea, and you're creating a value that is going to be tenfold better than just developing artwork for a national organization or a nonprofit that doesn't have that type of focus or energy behind it. So hats off to you. That's a fantastic connection.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Whenever we're talking about visual communication and how to do it, when to do it, if there's incorrect or improper communication, Doug, don't say anything. See, he's not. He's not. He's wow. He's obeying. It's amazing. What are some? We went through one of your presentations here, and it was really some good information. And if you could, I guess maybe in the course of 5 minutes here, can you give us those 6 guides of visual communication and how to actually figure out if you're doing it correctly?
Definitely. So that exact presentation I don't have in front of me, so I'm going to go off of memory. But I have like 50 rules, so you're going to hear a lot.
Well, I got them in front. I got them in front of me. So let me toss one up to you at a time. How about that?
Okay.
All right. Small visual cues have a large visual impact. Go.
Yes. Okay. So small visual cues have a large visual impact. The way you think about this, the example I always like to give is when Twitter changed their star button to a heart button last year.
Right.
And everybody on Twitter just went crazy. They were so angry about the shift, and rightly so. They used the button very specifically to, when it was a star, to star conversations that they wanted to refer back to later. And because it wasn't a heart, they could star anything. It could be something that they hated. They could still star it.
Right.
The heart, though, implies condoning a message. It implies acceptance or agreement. And so suddenly, even though the functionality of the tool remained exactly the same, by changing the star to a heart, the message of the tool, the message of how to interact with the tool completely shifted, which was what Twitter was trying to do. They were trying to take some negativity out of the whole Twitter universe,
right.
Because the star button was being used in a lot of negative ways. But by that very subtle visual cue completely changed how their entire audience interacted with that tool. And that's the idea of just subtle visual cues have a very, very large impact. When you're thinking about ways to grow conversions on your website, arrows, colors that you use,
right.
Iconography that you use, those are all things that will help impact how a user interacts with your site. And so you have to be really cognizant about your visual choices at all times. It's the same thing as the basic color theory of conversion rates. Do red buttons convert better than blue buttons? Heck yes, they do. And so you have to think about what different visual cues you can use to subtly nudge your audience to make the choices you want them to make.
So first and foremost, you have to inventory your existing visual cues or the absence of those sometimes inside of an organization, and then systematically introduce those. And those are subtext. Those are subtle. Not the giant graphic with the eyes pointing towards the button. That's not what we're talking about. Those icons, those small areas where, and usually they are call to actions or review us or these type of things. But you need to make sure you even have those before you can even try to adjust and improve those, right?
Exactly.
It's so funny because you mentioned the heart thing, and I just became a victim of this the other day because I hearted something, and then somebody jumped on me on Twitter and was like, I can't believe you really like that. And I'm like, no, I don't like it. I don't agree. I'm just saying that, yeah, it's a funny comment, but I don't necessarily agree with it. That's not my value. And they were like really mad at me. And I'm like, stop it. So I like really think about whether or not I'm going to heart something anymore on Twitter.
You clicked the wrong emoji and then the world comes after you. That's why I always go to the pile of what?
Forget them. Who cares?
I know. That's why I'm not on Twitter that much anymore. It's not any fun.
If you're going to social media for approval, just
well, no, it wasn't approval.
No, I don't mean you.
Oh, I know you don't mean
our
me.
Audience. So.
No, it was just really interesting because I think I kind of even know this person. They followed me for a while, and I was like, "Wait a minute, that's not what it is."
Show me that thread. I'll comment.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I need. I need Doug to jump on that gravy train right now.
All right, so Amy, another key point that you brought up there was the use of proper data visuals throughout.
Yes, this is a big one. I always like putting up examples for this, like major publications, major news networks, major online publications have been the victim of getting really excited about getting into data viz and then visualizing content incorrectly. For instance, a example I always show is from Brian Williams' NBC Nightly News report, and it's showing the diversity of America, and so it's meant to be an area graph.
Okay.
An area graph that shows how America has become more diverse over the years. But instead, they place it on top of America. Now, a map is already one piece of visual communication. Okay. So they're mixing data right there. By putting an area graph on top of another piece of data viz, it colludes the information. It makes it very hard to understand. And so the way it looks when you look at this thing, and I can send you an example, the way it looks is it makes it look like Maine is the most diverse state in America. Because
I'd agree with that.
That's a caca.
Because it has everybody who's Caucasian on the bottom part of the area graph, and then every demographic above that. And so it looks like the bottom 30 states of America are only white, and there's no other race or anything like that exists because they've placed this on top of another map. And this is what happens a lot. A lot of people like to they think that if I'm going to be visualizing data, I have to add some eye candy to it. No, you do not. You don't have to add any eye candy to it at all. And I get it. I was a victim of this as well. In 2011, I am documented as saying that if you can add some form of visual stimulation to the data viz, do it. I highly disagree now. That was back when we were creating a lot of link bait, and when that was the request and the demand was link bait in 2011 for infographics. Luckily, consumers have drastically evolved, and they want proper data viz, proper clear information. The fastest IQ that's raising in this country right now is the visual IQ. It's raising faster than any other form of IQ that exists.
How's that? So how's that measured? Quickly.
That's measured based on what people are interacting with more and what people are able to judge and comprehend more. And it's visual IQ. And so what's happening is verbal IQ and written IQ, those have plateaued, while visual IQ is like a hockey stick, going way above all of it.
Got it.
And so when you think about that, you need to be putting out 100% correct, clean data viz that's quick and easy to comprehend, not adding any visual fluff at all, because the minute you add visual fluff, you risk making that data viz harder to comprehend or easy to misinterpret. And if it's hard to comprehend or easy to misinterpret, people are going to lose trust and faith in your brand.
Now, just to clear the record, Brian Williams was under fire for that.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Did you guys get that?
I did. Under fire.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite examples to show, because I'm always just like, well, okay, guys, this was Brian Williams, so let's just with a grain of salt.
He was there. I was there.
Possibly. 4 points. Four last points there. If we can go through them quickly. Always think about context. What did you mean by that?
Always think about context. It's a con when there's too much text.
Ooh, see?
That's what that means.
Wow.
That's a play on words.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, all right then.
That makes me think about things a little bit differently.
Well, yeah,
makes me want to bring my content manager in here.
Well, I got to tell you, like the infographics, the so-called infographics that really irritate me the most are basically nicely formatted blog posts pasted into Illustrator.
Yeah.
Ooh, oh, seriously?
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically 10 reasons why.
Right.
But there's no visual aesthetic to it. No.
Exactly.
I can't. You wrote a blog post. Like, stop it.
Stop playing with pictures.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another point, keep the audience top of mind.
Yes, this is really a big deal. It's very important to consider who your audience is when you're designing any form of visual communication, because a lot of people think if I'm visualizing information, I'm making it for the everyman. That's not true. Your audience might be people who are highly educated in a very specific field.
Right.
And that means you have to use the exact same languages of that field when you're talking to them. If you dumb it down for Joe Schmo, if you dumb it down for Joe Schmo, they're gonna look at it and feel like this isn't meant for me, or they're gonna feel like, okay, this brand thinks I'm an idiot. So you always have to consider the audience when providing this information and make sure that you're visualizing content not just for everybody, but specifically for that audience that you have in mind. And that's going to really help you decide what color palette you're going to use, what illustration style you're going to use, what fonts you're going to use, what type of data viz you're going to use, the iconography. All of it comes down to the audience, because if the audience is a government audience, for instance, you don't want to create something that the general young consumer is going to like. You're going to want to create something that is seen as highly professional and just highly
and a 2-year-old could recognize
authoritative.
I'm just
there you go. Okay, government might not have been the right choice.
Different problems have different solutions, and I think you actually elaborated on that with your 50-state execution there. But anything else in that space?
No, that's actually every time I use that rule, I use the solutions project as my example.
Very good. Very good.
So, yeah.
And I think we can all agree upon this as being digital marketers here in 2016 into 2017. Quality overrules quantity.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is a really big one. We're in a space right now where there's so many DIY tools out there.
Yep.
And so a lot of people say, you know what, I can just do this on my own. Or there's a lot of companies out there that have gotten on the infographic bandwagon and they're charging like $500 an infographic, which is what we used to charge. I get it. But we used to charge it and do 100% custom work still. A lot of these places that are charging $500 an infographic are outsourcing all of the work to designers who are often using stock imagery or free imagery online. They're not actually customizing the work for the content, so they're not truly
reusing what they've designed for somebody else and changing it just a small amount. Yeah, absolutely. It's poor quality.
Yeah, they're not visualizing the information. And what we have learned in our own experience is when it's 100% custom, it performs 10 times better.
Yep.
10 times better. Than something that is using canned or stock imagery. And studies from Huffington Post. Sorry, we were talking about politics, and Huffington Post is just everywhere with politics these days.
Right.
Studies from HubSpot show that custom design, original design that's designed specifically for the content, has a 7 times greater chance of converting than any type of stock or vector imagery. So doing a bunch of content, basically going the cheap route and developing hundreds of infographics, basically what you're doing is you're leading with this idea that you're not committed to quality. So you're losing the trust of your customers. You're automatically spamming your customers at that point. Whereas if you're producing something that really keeps them top of mind, that is custom, clean, that has content that is visualized specifically for the information at hand, you have a much better chance of earning their faith and their loyalty. And so if it means that you're going to be putting out 1 thing a month versus 10 things a month, that's fine, because you're putting out quality content that tells your customer base that you're dedicated to quality and you're dedicated to providing them with really good content. It tells them that you don't think that they're idiots, basically.
Well, yeah, you're sending that visual cue to them whenever you buy low quality content, low quality artwork. So you can't cheat corners. I mean, this is the era of quality above quantity, and there's no angles around good, authentic marketing. There's not.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I want to end, but really appreciate those insights, because those are absolutes that really need to be part of, kind of the mantra of any visual communicator, right, in digital space. Last couple of key points. Tom, you had a question regarding infographics.
So we always like to end with some fun questions. So what's like the best infographic you've seen, and what's the worst one you've ever seen?
Oh, geez. The worst.
Why do they always start with the worst?
That sticks out more.
Well, no, I mean, to be entirely honest with you, the worst I've ever seen is the one I produced. The history of e-commerce. It's the first infographic I ever produced. It took 3 weeks for me to design it. I designed the whole thing in Photoshop instead of Adobe Illustrator, which was mistake number 1. It's riddled with different fonts throughout because I kept changing my mind on the font I wanted to use. It's riddled with stock imagery throughout. I did the research as I went, which you can tell because at the very end, I just kind of jumble it all into the bottom because I was tired of changing the size of the canvas in Photoshop. It's truly one of the worst infographics I have ever seen.
Now, which one is it? Is that the one with the shop? Was that the one with the shopping cart in there?
Yeah, that is.
So we had one.
The history of e-commerce.
We had one pitched to us last week for the Marketing Tech blog, and whoever the artist was just copied and pasted the blurb for every section. And they didn't even notice. It was already published out there, so nobody actually read the infographic. So it was pretty funny. I just wrote it back. I was like, yeah, I think we'll pass. Thank you.
Nice.
We're actually looking at your infographic now.
Right
Amy.
now. That's why we wanted to know.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad, guys.
I don't think it's that bad.
I like the bubbles are fun.
The .com bubble.
I've seen a lot worse.
Oh, yeah. That was when I found a bubble brush on graphicriver.net. I had learned what bubble brushes were, and then I had a lot of fun with that. Yeah.
I like it.
I would say one of the best, and this is definitely a very biased decision for best.
Right.
But it's by far my favorite project that we've ever done at Killer, and that's why it's the best in my mind. It is the Puget Sound Tech Universe. It's on our website. For me, it's something that's very near and dear to me. The reason being, in 2008, the Washington Technology Industry Association released an infographic showing the connection of all of the tech companies in the greater Seattle, Puget Sound region. And basically this infographic, which the design was very 90s, but it showed the connection of how Microsoft has basically spurned a bunch of companies in Seattle, and Amazon has spurned a bunch of companies, how they've created all of these really cool companies and created the economy of Seattle. And when I left my job in June of 2010, my boss at the time pulled me aside and pointed out that old poster, the one that was developed in 2008. He brought me to it. It was hanging up, and he said one day he would see my company on that poster. So it was always very near and dear to me. And last year, the Washington Technology Industry Association, in connection with Madrona Ventures, came to me and said, we want to redo this.
Right.
It took a year to gather all of the data. It took months to pour through the data. I was the one pouring through the data because I didn't want anybody else to touch it because I was so in love with this project. And one of our amazing designers put the whole design together. And it's what I love about it is when you understand the context of it, from afar, you immediately see that Microsoft, Amazon, the University of Washington, and Boeing are huge tech clusters in Seattle that have really grown the entire economy. And so that's what I love about it. It's this visual that shows the economic climate of the Puget Sound region. And then you can dive in and spend hours looking at it and connecting the dots and seeing how every different company is connected. So that's what I love about it, because it's really fun. It's got a great purpose to it. It gives you great insight into a whole region. It was shown at the World Economic Forum because it shows exactly how to visualize an economy. And so for me, that's my absolute favorite. But again, I'm biased, and I have a huge reason behind it that I love it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, last question here. What would you give the Pioneer plaque that we sent up to the aliens? Would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Personally, Tom has no idea what we were trying to tell them online. But that is one of our first infographics, or the infographic we send into space.
I use that as an example in a class I teach every quarter. I would give it a thumb sideways. And here's why I would give it a thumb sideways. Because it was the first real attempt for a national organization to say, how are we going to speak to somebody who doesn't speak our language? And so what I love about it is it's visual communication at its base, at its heart. It's all about communicating to an alien life form.
Okay.
What I hate about it is it shows aliens our anatomy and basically says, here we are, come get us. So
there's meat. Check it out.
Right? It's not the first message I would have given to a potential invading culture. But I love the concept behind it. So that's why it gets a sideways thumb for me as opposed to a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Probably be thumbs down if we actually start, if they take us up on the message and look at us all as meat on sticks, you know?
Yeah.
Right?
There's that. Okay, well.
His thumbs down.
There's another staff joke.
Just saying.
Staff. This is staff.
Oh, I'm so happy that there wasn't a lot of that this show. Hey, Amy, thank you so much. Very, very insightful, and you certainly come across with a lot of passion inside of visual communications. Is there something that we can actually promote for you here on the show?
I think the biggest thing to note is if you want to know what the future is in this industry, it's campaigns. Gone are the days of getting one infographic and having that be the fix. That was the fix in 2010, 2011, and 2012. Today, marketers are using an average of 12 to 14 types of visual content per campaign.
Oh, wow.
You really need to be producing a couple of pieces of great, strong, powerful visual content every month if you want to see continued growth and continued success. We live in an age that we call the speak visually age all around our office, where Gen X and millennials, Gen Z and millennials, they're speaking a visual language every single day through Snapchat, through Instagram, through Facebook. They expect brands to speak visually back to them, and they don't want brands to just try it once. Trying it once isn't the solution.
Sure.
Brands need to have a continued conversation with their audience as they always have, but today that conversation has moved into the visual realm. And so it's very important for brands to focus on speaking visually. That's our core purpose at Killer Infographics. We help our clients speak visually to all of their customers.
Very good. Are you going to be speaking anytime soon? Visually or otherwise?
Yep. I'll be speaking at the Seattle Interactive Conference on Tuesday next week. And then after that, my next thing is going to be Adobe Max in San Diego.
Oh, fun.
I don't even remember the dates. It's the first week of November, the Thursday and Friday of the first week of November. And I think those might be my last speaking engagements of the year, which is nice because I've done about 24 different conferences this year. So it'll be good to take a break.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we certainly appreciate the time you spent with us on the show today. And you certainly did give some last final words here, is that if you're not speaking visually to your audience, you're absolutely missing a huge part of language today. You've got to embrace that and be able to utilize multiple forms of communication to be able to convert.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Amy. And we're going to go ahead and jump off. Thank you again.